Hi, my name is Ryan. Welcome to Central Park. I work for the Central Park Conservancy. We take care of the park and keep it clean and green all year round. We know that you might not be able to get to Central Park right now, so we're going to bring the park to you through short discovery activities that you can do at home. In each video, we'll ask yourselves a question. Today's question is, what tree shapes can you see? Today's video will look around and try to make some observations about trees. We'll try to act out some of the shapes. For today's activity, you'll need no more than yourself and a view, but some optional materials to continue the activity include crayons, markers, pencils, and something to draw on. Mirrors and flashlights can also come in handy, and you'll see why in just a little bit. In this video, we're going to have a look out our windows, doors, and around our homes for trees. Have you ever used a tree before to sit under? Maybe to climb, have a picnic under, or maybe use a tree as an umbrella when it was raining. Ever find that some trees make more shade than others? Trees seem alike at first glance, but if you look a little longer, you'll notice how different trees are, especially their shapes. There's almost 18,000 trees found in Central Park, some of which can even be found where you live. Whether they're in a nearby park, planted along your street, or even in your backyard, trees are just like us. Trees come in all different shapes and sizes, and we'll explore that today in our video. Let's take some looks at trees. Here's a quick little example for today's activity. So for today's activity, which we'll get to in just a little bit, we'll be making tree shapes using mirrors, cameras, or shadows like you can see in these pictures. Here's an example of using the sun for this activity, which is something really fun to do. So let's take a closer look at some trees. Here we can see a line of trees from a very famous area in Central Park. Does anybody know where this is? Maybe you visited this area before. This area is the Mall, and it's located in the southern section of Central Park near Bethesda Terrace. These beautiful trees are American elms, and although you may not see many along city streets anymore, there are plenty to enjoy in Central Park. There are a few different types of elms found in the park. Most elms tend to grow their branches wide and crooked, like many of these trees along the Mall. Let's take a closer look at one of these elm trees. Here we can see an elm growing widespread along the Mall. Let's try to mimic this tree shape using our shadows, a mirror, or having an adult take a picture of you. So in just a moment, we'll pause the video and try to act out an elm tree shape. Let's take a quick look at this elm and notice how it's growing. It's very crooked, it's widespread. Those ones on the Mall tend to make a ceiling almost. So these grow in all different crooked, widespread shapes. Think about that when you're making your elm tree impression. All right, so in just a moment, we'll pause the video. Once you're done, you can resume the video and we'll continue with our tree observation and impressions. So pause the video now and then resume when you're done making your elm tree impression. Great, so you just made an elm tree impression. Hope you had a little fun with that, getting all crooked and wild in your different patterns and using your arms and legs in the photo. We're going to continue now and look at some different trees and compare those to the ones we just made an impression of. So we're going to go to a lesser visited area of Central Park, but one that's still very important. Have you ever visited Central Park's Great Lawn? If so, you may have noticed this area nestled in the northwest corner, which features a bunch of beautiful coniferous or needle-having trees. Many varieties of evergreen trees can be found in this area of the park, the Arthur Ross pine needle. This area features about 17 different species of pine trees, like these large Himalayan pines. Coniferous trees are not only different leaves, but different shapes too. Unlike the elm trees lining the Mall, many of these Himalayan pines grow in more of a pyramid or kind of like a triangle shape in my eyes. Let's take a closer look though at one of these pine trees. So after we look a little bit closer, we can see that these pine trees definitely are very different than the elms we were just looking at. So you may not see as many pine trees where you live compared to the number of broadleaf trees like elms. Maybe you visited some of these trees before. anybody's ever gone to Rockefeller Center during November or around the fall time, you may have visited the Rockefeller Center tree. That's a type of pine tree put up there every year. So there's many different types of pine and coniferous trees that can be found around New York City, especially in Central Park. But looking at this one up close, we can see that its branches are kind of pointed up, but it's definitely in more of a triangle or pyramid type shape. So let's take that into consideration when we try to do a pine tree impression. So whenever you're ready, pause the video and try to act out your best pine tree impression, and then resume when you're done. Great, so acting out a nice pine tree impression probably felt very different than the elm tree we just did. Let's try one other type of tree you can find in Central Park and see what the three are like compared. So we're going to jump a little bit more north now in Central Park and visit an area that's known for running. Do you like running? If so, you may have visited this area before. This area of Central Park is known for its running track, as well as the beautiful cherry blossom trees like the one you can see here. These trees line the eastern and western pass of this area, which is the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. It has a beautiful collection of Yoshino cherry blossoms, which are the trees pictured here. Have you ever visited New York City Park or Botanical Garden in the springtime? If you have, you probably have seen some cherry blossoms blooming. Here in Central Park, we have about 5 different types of cherry blossoms that you can see blooming throughout the springtime. Let's take a better look at some of these cherry blossoms. So here's a closer view at some of these Yoshino cherry blossom trees. So these are growing very different than the elms and pine trees we were just looking at. Unlike the tall and crooked growth of the elms and the more uniform and orderly pine trees, the Yoshino cherries grow much smaller and kind of all over the place. Cherry blossoms on their own tend to grow pretty wild. So wild that they almost fall over. Some of them actually do. Without the care of the Central Park Conservancy and our gardeners, some of these trees might not become this big. So luckily, with their care, we have a lot of wonderful, beautiful cherry blossom trees that are coming out in the springtime. So like we did before, let's try to imitate a cherry tree's growth without falling over, of course. So remember, with this one, we have a lot of creativity because they don't grow in one specific way. Cherry blossom trees really kind of grow however they want. So take a little time to create your own cherry blossom impression. Pause the video now and then resume when you're done. All right. So I hope you had a little fun with the cherry blossom impression because like we were talking about, those can kind of go wherever. They grow very uniquely. And what you've probably noticed just with the 3 tree poses we started to imitate, all of these trees grow very, very differently. And that's only 3 different types. You can imagine there are over 100 different species of trees growing throughout Central Park, and many of these trees grow in their own unique way. We might kind of overlook and really see trees all over the place when we go to parks at least, but we might not really fully take into consideration how different each tree is. So now that we've actually explored a couple different tree shapes, we can see that these trees grow in drastically different ways. Not only do they benefit us, but they probably benefit the tree in the way they're growing as well. Next time you're walking through the woods, try to keep your eyes out and look at the different trees and see how they're growing. Some are long and skinny and tall, some are growing really wide. But each tree tells its own little story, and one that we can see firsthand. So now we've opened our eyes to some of these cool ideas, we want to encourage you to maybe continue this activity. We definitely can have fun acting out our own tree shapes using mirrors or even a flashlight or the sun to create a tree shape with our shadow. But if you'd like to continue and maybe draw a picture using colored pencils, markers, or whatever medium you'd like, you can ask an adult to submit a picture of your finished tree, and we can get a look at what you came up with. Get a little creative and design your own tree. And if you enjoyed this virtual tour and you would like to continue doing more, we do have more of these virtual walks available on our website, centralparknyc.org. And if you want to continue, we can you also have more options on our website. By continuing to centralparknyc.org/mycentralpark, you can find scrambles, coloring pages, and different activities for kids. Thank you so much for participating, and we hope to see you next week. Have a great day, everybody.